Today the world is turned upside down. Let's turn it back. It is possible to change the world, but it is challenging.
I'm striving to make the world a better place. Striving to build what I'm calling a solidarity economy. An economy that's not only about making profit and growth, but about putting people and planet front and center. A friend of mine called it a utopian vision. She called me a dreamer. But since when has that been such a bad thing? I am, but I'm sure I'm not the only one. Often get up in the morning and hope that today will be a better place for everyone. If I ask you, what does society look like? Can you give me an answer? I will come back to this question later. The first time I was asking myself this question, words as economically driven, competitive, individualistic, and capitalistic came to mind. According to the cultural dimensions theory from Hofstede, columnist Sida Noor Hassan, and the words of Jacobs, professor of economics, my thoughts are not even that strange. It were precisely these thoughts that became the starting point of my search. We are all under the spell of the coronavirus. A virus we do actually not know well enough to determine how we should respond to a situation like this. And although it's hardly the ideal situation for anyone, something caught my attention. People started helping each other, various initiatives were introduced, and the most vulnerable were supported. But how do we see ourselves? As a part of a larger us? A them and us, or an atomized I? According to Alex Evans, founder of the Collective Psychology Project, everyone is answering this question during the crisis. I personally prefer a larger us. I see the possibilities in the solidarity economy. Bernard Aim and Jean-Louis Laville, two professors from France, define the solidarity-based economy as a perspective centered on all production, distribution and consumption activities contributing to the democratization of the economy based on citizen commitments and public engagement in civil society. The solidarity economy seeks to transform the dominant authoritarian and capitalistic systems into a system that puts people and planet first. The solidarity economy is based on collective practices that convey the principle of solidarity. It seeks to cherish these values as opposed to competitive, individualistic values and the divisiveness that characterizes capitalism. Given that the solidarity economy is about systematic transformation, we are talking about change in all sectors, the economy, but also the state and the community. So the economy is not a natural phenomenon, but a social construction that is shaped by the combination of different dynamics in history, technology, the ecosystem, politics, and culture. Solidarity economy requires a shift in our economic society that prioritizes profit and growth to a society that prioritizes living in harmony. Last year I researched inequality. I wanted to look for a way to create an equal world. Yes, a utopian vision. And yes, I am a dreamer. But after my research, I realized that an equal world is not the solution. In fact, according to Klaas Burger, if we all say that inequality has to be reduced, it would mean the bankruptcy of our society. There is something similar that we share, but there is also something uneven. We cannot all be equal. Some differences must be accepted, and some inequalities cannot be solved. I'm not striving towards an equal world anymore, but I want to strive towards a better world, a more solidarity-focused world. And that's not only my responsibility, it's a shared responsibility. At this point, organizations and governments are essentially unable to break through the framework provided by the growth economy. This is mainly due to the fact that the economy remains driven by a deeply anchored principle. The system rewards competition and profit and makes cooperation and solidarity difficult. That is why creating something new and setting up systems based on different logic is of such fundamental importance. However, alternative economic approaches remain underdeveloped. I spoke with Gijs Dierks, a researcher from Research Institute Drift, and according to him, the world is full of ideas and initiatives, but these initiatives are not always strong enough to shape an entire country. However, we both notice that the principle under which these initiatives arise and are implemented are not based on thoughts in a capitalistic, financial, and efficient way, but thoughts that make people and nature better. These initiatives can be inspiring and show that we don't have to do it like we always do it, but that we can do it in many different ways. We, the society, do not yet know how to implement a solidarity way of life in a new system, so that it can preserve itself. Regardless of the countless initiatives and policy concepts, none of these have led to coherent alternatives so far. This gap is a major problem. If cooperative forms of work, care, housing, and business were widespread, many people will find it easier to change their daily habits. Public debates could point to established alternative models, and it would be more difficult to criticize the current system as destructive and aimless. Instead, institutions and infrastructures could build on these alternatives and help consolidate them. If we want to develop a realistic strategy that outlines ways to implement a good life, we need the coherent concept of a solid way of producing and living. I have different thoughts about implementing a solidarity economy. As we see nowadays, the individual, the I, the rational utility-focused person is central. If I want to say, okay, I want to move things, I want to change the current way of doing things, the current regime, I want to put solidarity more as a central element, then I have to try to build a new niche somewhere. According to Professors Adrian Smith and Rob Raven, a niche can be defined as a protective space for path-breaking innovations, so new ideas, alternatives. If you can see in the framework, there are two types of niches. Moderate niches improve the current system. Radical niches change the current system. Whatever new niche you create, you hope to connect that niche with different initiatives, also addressing that topic, in this case solidarity. And then, if you are powerful enough, then you try to really influence the regime level. Hopefully you will inspire others further away, somewhere around the world. An innovative approach from below is building up a concrete alternative vision, where people are involved in a new cooperative economy based on daily choices easy to make. Consuming sustainable good, using fair trade products, supporting local economy and farmers, and making ecological and social transition a reality for everyone. There are different trends going on, and that is what you can see during this corona crisis as well. I'm not the only one who is now considering what can be done after the corona crisis. That's done worldwide. Worldwide, people are looking for alternatives and convinced that we should take care of the ecology and should embrace solidarity in a different way. I believe now is the time to think new thoughts and imagine a better economy post-corona. This phase enables us to ask questions and give answers that were unthinkable only a short while ago. The corona crisis is only an opportunity if we can live that new solidarity and reflections on our destructive way of life. From national to global, from neighborhood to system. If we realize that financial prosperity and an EU passport are not going to save us. 17 million people on this very small piece of the earth. Do not prescribe them the laws, but leave them in their values. Maybe I didn't use the right translation for this Dutch song, but during the corona crisis, it appears that the Netherlands is not the sum of 70 million individuals, but a national community with a lot of solidarity, brotherhood and charity. The big question is, of course, whether it will remain that way. Does the corona crisis bring about a social change, or will it blow over if we have had the worst? What opportunities present themselves in the current situation? I think returning to business as usual means a fundamental misunderstanding of the current problems. Moreover, there's every reason to think again about the old economy. Many times I have wondered, why has the world become such an uncomfortable one? I believe that we can only conclude that the current order has reached its limits. It's time to focus on a different system. Solidarity economy-based approaches are one of the many ways to organize society differently. Alternative economies have been considered for years. I took advantage of this situation, the corona crisis, to conduct further research and perhaps even to make a statement. The biggest danger to our society is not a virus like corona. The greatest danger comes from socio-economic unrest. And hand washing and a meter and a half distance do not help for that. But besides being our own enemy, we are also the solution. Look at the solidarity that is now emerging. We can do it. It's in us. Primatologist Frans de Waal does speak of the veneer theory. Civilization is only a thin layer that cracks at the slightest touch. Humans are selfish, panicky and aggressive by nature. But it's exactly the other way around. It is precisely when people face a threat, people become more supportive towards each other. Only in recent years has one scientist after another from completely different disciplines come to the conclusion that our dark view of humanity is in need of a complete overhaul. The consequences of a more hopeful view of humanity are radical. If we start to see the good in people, we can organize our society completely different. My teacher asked me, "What is the essence of your story?" He asked me a second time, "What is the essence of your story?" The essence of my story is to change the essence of life. Yes, I am a dreamer with a utopian vision of the world. We must stop thinking what we cannot do and start thinking what we can do. I'm not going to ask you again, what does society look like? But I want to ask you, what do you want society to look like? Do you want to go back to business as usual after the corona crisis? Or do you see the situation as an opportunity? If you want to hear my deeper thoughts about how to implement a solidarity economy-based approach, then I'm happy to invite you for a cup of coffee with me.
The question is not whether something is going to change the world. The question is when is something going to change the world?